Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, June the 3rd. Kind of an interesting weather pattern shaping up for much of the eastern half of the nation over the next week or two, with a pretty strong upper level low that will kind of rotate south and east to a position over the Great Lakes, causing some below normal temperatures likely for much of the east. Let's say beginning later this week and continuing well into next week. Looks like at least the first half of June we'll see in general cooler than normal, unsettled conditions in the eastern half of the nation, and warmer than normal and drier than normal out across the western half of the nation. Before we get to the upcoming weather pattern, just thought I'd throw on an interesting picture here of the alignment of the planets that will take place early tomorrow morning. Of course, weather permitting in your local area, but if you look to the east about a half hour or so before sunrise, you may see this alignment of the planets, and the moon will be in there as well. But you have Jupiter, Mercury, Uranus, Mars, and Neptune and Saturn all in the eastern sky, kind of lined up here early tomorrow morning. Probably about 5 o'clock or so is the best time to look. 4:45, 5 a.m. At least in New York City, Washington, Philadelphia. Sunrise is around 5:30, so you probably want to go out there by 5 a.m. or so if interested in viewing this alignment of the planets. Now, before we take a look at that upper level low that will become quite a main player in the eastern half of the nation over the next week or two, let's kind of go back and look at the month of May, the overall temperatures across the nation for the month of May. And not too far from normal, is about 1.3 degrees above normal. But the main thing I want to point out here is the dichotomy across the nation, with generally colder than normal conditions across the west and warmer than normal conditions across maybe the eastern two-thirds or half the nation. Again, overall, this amounted to 1.3 degrees above normal for the month of May. Now, this pattern tells you a couple of things. First of all, it kind of tells you why we had a very active month in terms of severe weather right in the middle part of the nation. You had the colder than normal air centered over the western half of the nation, kind of driving to the south and east and interacting with the warmer than normal conditions. And it also tells you that we indeed had a Gulf of Mexico flow of air leading to those warmer than normal conditions, and likely in many cases more humid conditions compared to normal in the heartland here. And again, this was your battle zone region during the month of May, and we had numerous severe weather outbreaks and tornadic activity that boosted the overall numbers to well above normal levels as we begin here in the month of June. Now, this kind of a weather pattern here, or temperature pattern, is likely to flip over the next couple of weeks, with the colder than normal conditions centered over the eastern third of the nation and the warmer than normal conditions out across the west. Now, let's start off here by looking at the ensemble run of the European model from last night at 0-0. We're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies averaged out over 5-day periods. This is the current 5-day period, a ridge out across the western part of the nation, a lot of hot weather and dry weather out across the western part of the nation. But watch what takes place here as we move forward here over the next week or two. Start to see this upper level trough intensify over the Great Lakes. This is now days 5 to 9, which is later this week, the 7th of June, going right into the early part of next week. So here, right off the bat, is a kind of a flip in the overall temperature pattern, as dictated here by the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern here by late this week and weekend into early next week, in that warmer than normal conditions look like they'll dominate out across the western half of the nation. And we'll take a look at those temperature anomalies shortly here, with an upper level trough centered over the east, cooler than normal conditions. We'll go out a couple other time periods, and that kind of sticks around for a while. Here we are now, days 10 to 14. This is all the way from June 12th to June 17th, so kind of centered on the middle of the month of June, with upper level trough situated over the eastern half of the nation, and that upper level ridge out across the west. Again, warmer than normal, probably drier than normal in much of the western half of the nation for much of the next couple of weeks, and cooler than normal for much of the next couple of weeks in the eastern half of the nation. We'll go out just a little bit farther in time here, and it's still showing up here as we get into the second half of the month of June with that ridge out west, trough in the east. Now, how does that 500 millibar height anomaly trend translate to temperatures? Well, these are the 850 millibar temperatures average over 5-day periods. This is the current 5-day period. A lot of heat out in the western part of the nation, specifically the far west here. In Nevada, California, very, very warm. Kind of a mixed bag over the interior Rocky Mountain states right now. But we'll kind of push forward here and watch how this kind of flips with that upper level trough moving into the east over the next several days here. Here we go, days 6 to 10. This is now June 8th to June 13th, and a flip in the temperature pattern that we experienced in the month of May with warmer than normal conditions out throughout much of the western half of the nation and cooler than normal much of the eastern half of the nation. Again, that's a flip in the pattern compared to the month of May. Now we'll go out a little farther in time, and it sticks around. This is all the way out days 10 to 14, and keep in mind that ensemble runs tend to kind of smooth things out with time as climatology plays more and more of a role. So even though this looks like the cooler than normal conditions are kind of weakening relative to normal, that's still pretty impressive when you're going out days 10 to 14. By the way, this is now centered on the middle part of the month of June. Go out a little farther in time, it still remains here with a lot of warmer than normal conditions out in the western half of the nation, and normal to below normal across much of the eastern half of the nation. Again, this is going all the way to at least the middle part of the month of June. Well, let's wrap up by taking a look at the surface weather maps from the conventional run of the European model. The prior set of maps were from the ensemble run. This is the conventional 0Z run. Unsettled weather over the next several days across much of the eastern half of the nation. A lot of dry conditions out across the southwestern states. Let's move forward here, and we'll see here on the surface maps how we'll have kind of a cooler than normal pattern showing up here in the Great Lakes and northeast U.S. By the way, still some strong to severe thunderstorm over the next couple of days across the middle part of the nation. That has been the most active part of the nation over the recent week or two, but tending to wind down here. We're tending to smooth things out. That temperature pattern in May with colder to the north and west, warmer to the south and east, that is really what helps to produce severe weather in the heartland here. The flip in the temperature pattern, not so much. When you have warmer than normal conditions out west, cooler than normal conditions in the eastern half of the nation, that certainly is not conducive to sustained severe weather threats in the middle part of the nation. We'll go out a little farther in time here. This is now tomorrow morning. And again, kind of an unsettled weather pattern throughout the eastern states. Certainly no total washouts. But here we go now into the midweek, and we'll see this time period. This is now early Wednesday morning. Well, we'll start to get that upper level low kind of rotating down to the south and east over the Great Lakes, and that'll cause more numerous showers and thunderstorms at midweek. Let's say Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night in the mid-Atlantic region, maybe the interior northeastern states here. And some of this rain can be heavy at times, and one of the ways we can tell the temperature pattern here is by looking at these thickness lines here, these dashed red lines here. Again, these represent the thickness values of that layer between the ground level, or 1,000 millibars, and the middle layer of the atmosphere, 500 millibars. The lower these thickness values, the lower the temperatures here. Here, for example, is a 564 thickness. We'll go out a little later in the week here, and we have 558 thickness right here cutting across southeastern Pennsylvania. That is pretty cool air for this time of the year. And again, this is kind of the center of that cooler than normal air mass with that upper level low situated right in this region here. Again, this is by the end of this work week. We're talking about Friday morning. A lot of heat out across the west. In fact, a thermal lows tending to show up here on the surface weather maps here out across eastern California at the end of the work week, and we'll go a little farther in time. Still unsettled whenever you have cooler than normal conditions, especially in the upper part of the atmosphere this time of the year. That can steepen the lapse rate, and it can lead to typically midday or afternoon showers in the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast on the table for the latter part of the upcoming week. We'll go all the way out into the upcoming weekend. Here we go on Saturday morning. Still, continuation of cooler than normal conditions out across the Northeast, Great Lakes, and the mid-Atlantic region. And again, that ridge out west will cause a lot of warmer than normal conditions in the western half of the nation. So a flip in the temperature pattern coming at least for the next couple of weeks compared to what we experienced across the nation in May, in that the cooler than normal conditions out in the west will be replaced over the next few weeks by warmer than normal conditions, and the opposite in the east with cooler than normal conditions coming for the next couple of weeks. And that flip in the temperature pattern reduces the chance for severe weather in coming days across the middle part of the nation. Again, we had a spurt of tornadic activity across the nation, but specifically centered over the center part of the nation in the recent week or two. Really, that spurt in the tornadoes began in late April, continued right through the end of May, but we ought to have a flattening out, I think, over the next couple of weeks. So that's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Doria.